Welcome to Mr. Hutchings History, where the past comes alive. Let's dive into today's story.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be traveling back in time to the heart of the civil rights movement.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
Better known as SNCC.
Yes, SNCC. In 1960s Mississippi, we're going to be diving into a podcast episode all about their work there. So get ready for some stories of incredible courage and grassroots activism and a fight for justice that, changed the course of history.
You know, what's so powerful about this story is that SNCC actually chose Mississippi as, their battleground.
Really?
Yeah. Imagine trying to, spark change in a state where the odds were totally stacked against you.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Mississippi in the 1960s, it was practically a different world.
Oh, absolutely.
Can you believe that only 5% of Black adults were registered to vote?
It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah. And then on top of that, they had to deal with literacy tests and just limited access to registration offices. Ugh. It was a system designed to silence their voices, to maintain that grip on power.
Yeah, for sure.
But what's interesting is that SNCC recognized that political change, it couldn't happen in a vacuum.
What do you mean?
They saw that the lack of voting rights was really just a symptom of, a much deeper problem.
Oh, I see.
The systematic disenfranchisement of Black communities.
So how did they even begin to tackle, such a massive issue?
Well, one of their most, innovative approaches was the creation of freedom schools.
Freedom schools?
Yeah.
What are those?
These weren't your typical schools. They went beyond just teaching reading and math.
So what made them so special?
Well, they actually taught African-American history and social studies.
Interesting.
Which were subjects that were often left out of mainstream education.
Wow.
They brought in dynamic speakers and used all these interactive teaching methods to make learning exciting and engaging.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't just about facts, It was about instilling a sense of pride and identity and agency in the students.
I love that.
Right. It's like they were giving them the tools not just to read, but to read between the lines.
Absolutely.
To understand their own history and their rights and their power to create change.
Exactly. And a key figure who embodies that spirit of empowerment is Fannie Lou Hamer.
Oh, yes. Fannie Lou Hamer. Her story is just incredible.
It really is.
I still get chills when I hear her famous quote, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired."
Oh, it's so powerful.
It's so raw and so real, and it's so relatable.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think we've all felt that way at some point?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That deep frustration with injustice.
Totally.
And what made Hamer such a powerful leader was that she wasn't this distant figure.
Yeah.
She was a former sharecropper.
Right.
She knew firsthand the struggles of Black Mississippians, and her leadership was really rooted in her lived experiences.
Absolutely.
Which allowed her to connect with people on a very, personal level.
It's true.
She was a voice for the voiceless. So with these powerful figures and these innovative strategies, how did SNCC start making tangible progress?
Well, they took a two-pronged approach.
Okay.
First, they organized the Freedom Vote in 1963.
The Freedom Vote?
Yeah.
What was that?
It was a mock election that was aimed at demonstrating the potential political power of Black Mississippians.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Right.
It's like how social media campaigns today can mobilize people around a cause, even without, official recognition.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
It was a brilliant move, and even though it didn't have any legal standing,
right,
it gave Black Mississippians a taste of what it meant to, participate in the democratic process.
I see.
And thousands of people, many for the first time, actually experienced the act of voting.
Wow.
Which ignited this sense of hope and possibility.
That's so powerful.
Isn't it?
What a powerful way to build momentum.
It really was.
And then came Freedom Summer.
Yes.
That was an even bolder step.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So building on the success of the Freedom Vote SNCC, along with the Congress of Racial Equality, or CORE,
Okay.
launched Freedom Summer in 1964.
Okay.
And this initiative brought hundreds of volunteers, mostly white students from the North, to Mississippi to help with voter registration, expand freedom schools, and just expose the brutal realities of segregation.
That must have taken incredible courage for those volunteers to travel to Mississippi knowing the dangers they might face.
Absolutely. And sadly, Freedom Summer was marked by a horrific event.
Uh-oh.
The murders of James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner, 3 young civil rights workers.
Oh, no.
Killed by members of the Ku Klux Klan.
It's just impossible to forget that tragedy.
It's true.
It's a chilling reminder of the real risks and sacrifices made in the fight for racial equality.
Yeah.
But even in the face of such immense loss, SNCC's determination to create change never wavered.
It didn't. Instead of being defeated by tragedy, they channeled their grief and outrage into action.
Really?
Yeah. And they launched even bolder initiatives like the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party.
Okay, now this is where things get really interesting.
It does.
Tell me more about the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party.
All right. So in 1964, SNCC played a key role in forming the MFDP.
MFDP?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was essentially an alternative political party.
Wow.
Created to challenge the all-white Mississippi delegation at the Democratic National Convention.
So they weren't just trying to register voters.
No.
They were creating a whole new political structure.
They were?
To amplify Black voices and demand representation.
Exactly. It was a powerful statement.
Yeah.
And it was led by activists like Fannie Lou Hamer,
Of course.
who delivered this incredibly moving testimony at the convention
Oh, wow.
about the violence and disenfranchisement that Black Mississippians endured.
And her words, like, shook the nation right.
They did.
Oh.
They exposed the hypocrisy of a party claiming to be democratic while silencing entire communities.
It's incredible how they used the national stage to shed light on these injustices. Did they ultimately succeed in gaining full recognition at the convention?
So while they didn't achieve full representation, their campaign was a major turning point.
How so?
It forced the nation to confront the issue of racial discrimination in politics.
Right.
And exposed the deep flaws within the Democratic Party.
So even in their partial victory, they made a significant impact.
Absolutely. But, despite these victories, there was a growing sense of disillusionment within SNCC.
Why was that? I mean, weren't they making progress?
They were, but the progress was slow.
Yeah.
And often met with fierce resistance.
Right.
And the violence they encountered, coupled with the Democratic Party's kind of lukewarm support for the MFDP, led many in SNCC to question the effectiveness of their nonviolent tactics.
I can only imagine the frustration and disillusionment they must have felt.
Right.
It seems like this was like a pivotal moment for SNCC.
Yeah.
A turning point that would lead to significant changes within the movement.
Absolutely. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
By the late 1960s, there was this growing call for a more assertive and confrontational approach.
I see.
And leaders like Stokely Carmichael began advocating for Black power.
Oh, wow.
A movement that emphasized self-defense, Black pride, and a rejection of white paternalism.
So we're seeing a shift within SNCC.
Yes.
A move away from nonviolence toward a more militant stance.
Yeah.
I'm curious to explore this transformation further. What factors led to this evolution, and how do historians view this turning point in SNCC's history? Was it a natural progression or sign of fragmentation within the civil rights movement? We'll delve into these fascinating questions when we continue our deep dive.
Sounds good.
So we left off talking about that shift towards a more militant stance,
Right.
particularly with the rise of Black power.
Yeah.
It seems like their experiences in Mississippi, the violence, the slow pace of change, like really pushed them to rethink their strategies.
Yeah, it was definitely a turning point.
Yeah.
Not just for SNCC,
Right.
but for the civil rights movement as a whole.
Right.
And historians have different ways of understanding this shift
Interesting.
and offer various interpretations of SNCC's legacy,
I see.
especially their work in Mississippi.
So it's like we're piecing together a puzzle,
Yeah.
looking at the same events from different angles
Right.
to get like a clearer picture.
Exactly.
So how do these different perspectives like break down?
Okay, well, think of it this way.
Okay.
We have like four main schools of thought.
Okay.
The traditionalists,
Okay.
the radicals,
Uh-huh.
the continuity perspective,
Okay.
and the social historians.
Okay, so 4.
Yeah.
Got it.
And each group brings a unique lens to the table,
Okay.
helping us understand the complexity of SNCC's impact.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Let's start with the traditionalists.
Okay.
What's their take on SNCC?
So the traditionalists, historians like David Garrow,
Okay.
they view SNCC's work in Mississippi as a crucial step
Okay.
toward the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. They focus on how SNCC's activism, especially their voter registration drives,
Right.
and their efforts to expose the brutality of segregation,
Yeah.
really helped shift public opinion
Okay.
and put pressure on the federal government to act.
So for them, SNCC played a key role in paving the way for legislative victories
Absolutely.
that transformed voting rights in America.
Yes. They see SNCC's work as essential to the broader success of the civil rights movement.
Okay.
in achieving legal and political change.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, what about the radicals?
Right.
What's their perspective?
So the radicals historians like Claiborne Carson,
Okay.
they offer a more, let's say, fiery interpretation.
Interesting.
They argue that SNCC's experiences in Mississippi, especially the violence and resistance they encountered,
Right.
really radicalized the organization and its members.
I see.
Yeah.
So they see the shift toward Black power as a natural response,
Mhm.
even a necessary one,
Yes.
to the limitations of nonviolent tactics and the persistence of racism.
Exactly. They view Black power not as a departure from the movement, but as an evolution,
Oh, okay.
a recognition that true equality requires like a fundamental shift in power dynamics.
So both the traditionalists and the radicals acknowledge the significance of SNCC's work,
Yes,
but they interpret its trajectory in different ways.
they do. That's a great observation.
Yeah.
Now let's bring in the continuity perspective.
Okay.
All right. These historians, folks like Adam Fairclough,
Okay.
see SNCC's work in Mississippi as part of a much longer struggle for civil rights,
Interesting.
a struggle that stretches back to the Reconstruction era.
So they're emphasizing the historical context, the
Yeah.
connection to previous generations of activists
Yeah.
who fought for Black rights in Mississippi.
Exactly. They highlight how SNCC's efforts, things like Freedom Summer and the MFDP,
Right.
built upon the work of earlier activists,
Oh, wow.
creating a powerful through line of resistance across generations.
Like a relay race.
Yeah.
Each generation passing the baton to the next, continuing the fight for justice.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And finally, we have the social historians.
Okay.
They offer a slightly different lens through which to view SNCC's legacy.
What do they focus on?
So, social historians like Charles Payne
Uh-huh.
emphasize the grassroots nature of SNCC's work.
Oh.
They see SNCC's success in Mississippi as a testament to the power of community organizing, local leadership, and participatory democracy.
It's about empowering individuals and communities to take charge of their own destinies.
Exactly. They argue that SNCC's true legacy lies in its ability to foster agency among ordinary people,
Okay.
to inspire them to become active participants in the fight for their own liberation.
Powerful stuff.
They see this as a model for social change,
Mhm.
a reminder that lasting transformation often starts at the grassroots level.
So instead of top-down leadership, it's about empowering people from the ground up
Okay.
to be the agents of their own change.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And when we look at SNCC's work through the lens of these different historical perspectives,
Yeah.
we gain a much richer, more nuanced understanding of your impact.
I see.
It's like looking at a tapestry,
Okay.
appreciating the different threads and colors that make up the whole picture.
So even though these historical interpretations offer different perspectives,
Yeah.
they all point to the undeniable significance of SNCC's work in Mississippi.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see how these events from decades ago
Right.
still resonate with the fight for racial justice today.
What's remarkable is how many of the issues SNCC tackled are still relevant.
Really?
Voter suppression, economic inequality, police brutality,
Oh, wow.
the need for systemic change.
That's crazy.
Like history's rhyming,
Yeah,
repeating itself in different forms.
that's a chilling thought,
It is.
but also a reminder of the importance of understanding history so we can break these cycles of injustice.
Absolutely.
So let's dive into some of the key parallels between SNCC's struggles and the contemporary fight for racial justice.
Okay.
Where do you see the strongest connections?
Well, voter suppression is still a major issue.
Oh, yeah.
SNCC fought tirelessly to register Black voters in Mississippi,
Right.
facing violence, intimidation, and legal barriers.
Wow.
And sadly, many of those same tactics are still being used today,
Really?
often in more subtle forms, to disenfranchise minority voters.
It's disheartening to see how these tactics persist,
It is.
often under the guise of protecting election integrity.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to rewrite the rules of the game to maintain the status quo.
Right. And it's a reminder that the fight for voting rights is far from over.
Yeah.
It requires constant vigilance and activism
Right.
to ensure that everyone's voice is heard
Right.
and that our democracy is truly representative.
Another parallel that strikes me is the issue of economic inequality. SNCC recognized that political empowerment couldn't be achieved
Right.
without addressing the deep economic disparities
Yeah,
faced by Black communities.
absolutely.
How does this resonate with what we're seeing today?
I mean, we're still grappling with the legacy of systemic racism,
Right.
which has led to a massive wealth gap between Black and white Americans.
Yeah.
And we see it reflected in disparities in income, education, housing, and healthcare.
Oh, wow.
And these disparities are not accidental.
Right.
They're the result of centuries of discriminatory policies and practices
Yeah.
that have created and perpetuated these inequities.
It's like we're trying to run a race where some runners are starting miles behind the starting line.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that achieving true racial justice requires not just political rights, but also economic justice.
Absolutely. SNCC understood this interconnectedness.
Okay.
And it's a lesson that's more relevant than ever.
And of course, we can't ignore the issue of police brutality,
Right.
which was a constant threat for SNCC activists in Mississippi.
Yeah.
How do you see this connecting to the Black Lives Matter movement and the calls for police reform today?
The parallels are undeniable.
Right.
SNCC faced violence at the hands of law enforcement. And tragically, those same patterns of brutality and racial profiling
It's terrible.
continue to plague Black communities today.
Yeah.
The names of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor,
Right.
and countless others serve as a painful reminder that we have a long way to go
Yeah.
in dismantling systemic racism within our justice system.
It's a stark reminder that the fight for civil rights has always been about demanding accountability and justice from those in power, particularly those who hold the authority of the state.
Right.
It's about challenging systems
Yes.
that disproportionately harm marginalized communities.
And it's about recognizing that true change requires more than just individual reforms.
Okay.
It requires a fundamental shift in how we think about policing, race, and power.
So as we reflect on SNCC's legacy and its relevance today,
Yeah.
what are some of the key takeaways that can guide us in the ongoing struggle for racial justice?
One of the most important takeaways is the power of grassroots organizing.
Yeah.
You know, SNCC's success in Mississippi was deeply rooted in their ability to mobilize and empower local communities.
Yeah.
They understood that lasting change comes from the ground up,
Right.
from people coming together to demand justice and hold those in power accountable.
It's like the saying goes,
Yeah.
never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has.
Exactly. And another key takeaway is the importance of courage and perseverance.
Right.
You know, SNCC faced incredible odds,
Yeah.
including violence, intimidation, and legal barriers.
Wow.
But they never gave up.
It's incredible.
They understood that the fight for justice is a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
And it requires unwavering dedication and a willingness to keep pushing forward,
Yeah.
even when progress seems slow or elusive.
Their story is a powerful testament to the idea that we don't have to accept the world as it is. We have the power to shape a better future.
Absolutely. And finally, I think SNCC's legacy reminds us that social change is rarely a linear process.
What do you mean?
It's a long and winding road,
Okay.
one that requires both strategic action and a willingness to adapt and evolve.
So we need to be both pragmatic and visionary,
Yeah.
able to work within the system to achieve incremental gains,
Right.
while also pushing for more transformative change.
Exactly. We can draw inspiration from SNCC's willingness to challenge the status quo,
Yeah.
to push the boundaries of what's considered possible,
Right.
and to envision a more just and equitable future.
I see.
Their story reminds us that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges,
Right.
we have the power to create change if we are courageous, persistent, and willing to work together.
Wow, powerful stuff.
Yeah.
It's inspiring to think about how SNCC's legacy, continues to shape the fight for racial justice today.
Yeah.
Their story really reminds us that change is possible even in the face of overwhelming odds.
You know what strikes me is how SNCC's experiences in Mississippi,
Yeah.
like their shift from nonviolence to a more militant stance, really foreshadowed broader trends in the civil rights movement.
Interesting.
It's like their journey mirrored the growing frustration and determination
Yeah.
within Black communities nationwide.
So their experiences in Mississippi were like a microcosm of the larger movement.
Exactly.
Reflecting those shifting dynamics and strategies.
Yeah, the violence they faced, the slow pace of change, the limitations of relying solely on nonviolent tactics,
Right.
all of these factors kind of pushed SNCC and the movement at large towards a more assertive and confrontational approach.
It's almost like the seeds of Black power were sown in the fields of Mississippi,
Wow, yeah.
growing out of the struggles and triumphs SNCC experienced there.
That's a powerful way to put it.
Yeah.
And as we've discussed, the concept of Black power itself
Right.
is complex and multifaceted.
Yeah.
It was about self-defense, Black pride, economic empowerment,
Right.
and ultimately self-determination.
It was about reclaiming agency and defining their own path forward, rather than waiting for those in power to grant them rights and equality.
Exactly. And SNCC's evolution in Mississippi played a significant role in shaping those ideas
Okay.
and pushing the movement in a new direction.
This deep dive has been so eye-opening.
It has.
We've gone beyond just learning about historical events. We've explored different interpretations of SNCC's legacy,
Yeah.
uncovered parallels between their struggles and the fight for racial justice today, and even glimpsed how their experiences in Mississippi foreshadowed broader shifts in the movement.
It's been a fascinating journey, hasn't it?
It really has.
And I think it highlights the importance of engaging with history in a critical and thoughtful way.
Absolutely.
You know, we can't just passively absorb information.
Right.
We need to question, analyze, and connect the dots
Yeah,
to gain a deeper understanding of the past and its relevance to our present.
for sure.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I think the most important takeaway is that the fight for justice is an ongoing process.
Okay.
It's a relay race, with each generation building upon the struggles and triumphs of those who came before. And just like SNCC faced incredible challenges and setbacks,
Right.
so too will we encounter obstacles in our own time.
So it's about carrying the torch,
Yeah.
learning from the past,
Uh-huh.
and continuing to push forward towards a more just and equitable future.
Exactly. And SNCC's story reminds us that we don't have to accept the world as it is.
Right.
We have the power to shape a better world
Yeah.
if we are courageous, persistent, and willing to work together.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
It has been.
I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on the civil rights movement
But good.
and the enduring legacy of SNCC.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey of discovery.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to the deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep fighting for a better world.
Thanks for listening to Mr. Hutchings History. Keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.